When the air raid sirens began to howl over London in 1940, the entire city was plunged into darkness. Street lamps went dark, windows were covered, and households across Britain hung thick, heavy drapes to hide even a flicker of light. These weren't ordinary curtains, they were lifelines. Known as blackout curtains, they kept bombers from spotting targets, but few people realize that they also served another, lesser-known purpose. Beyond concealing light, they offered a form of physical defense, acting as improvised shields against shattered glass, flying debris, and even shock waves. This was more than wartime necessity. It was an early example of home defense engineering born from desperation and ingenuity. And remarkably, the same principles behind those blackout curtains still apply to modern security and emergency preparedness today. The blackout curtain was more than darkness, it was protection in disguise. The original blackout curtain emerged from one of the most terrifying civil defense campaigns in modern history, the Blitz. Between 1940 and 1941, over 1 million homes were damaged or destroyed by German air raids. A single exposed light could attract bombers, so every household was ordered to eliminate every trace of brightness. Curtains were made from any material dense enough to block light, often layers of felt, wool, or tightly woven cotton dyed deep navy or black. But as windows shattered from blast pressure and flying debris rained into homes, civilians began noticing something remarkable. The same curtains that kept their homes dark were also catching shards of glass like nets, preventing fatal injuries. Many survivors later recalled that their blackout curtains, often reinforced with blankets or tar paper, stopped fragments that could have blinded or killed. What began as a government-mandated effort to hide illumination quickly evolved into a grassroots form of home fortification. The thickest versions were tacked directly into wooden frames or nailed against doorways, doubling as both privacy and defense barriers. The curtain's defensive value came from physics, not luck. The science behind the blackout curtain's dual purpose is surprisingly straightforward. When a blast wave travels through air, it seeks weak points, windows being one of the weakest. Ordinary glass shatters into high-speed fragments, turning windows into miniature shrapnel bombs. The dense fibres of blackout fabric absorbed some of the impact and slowed those shards mid-flight. Wool, in particular, was favoured not only for its ability to block light, but also for its flame resistance and tensile strength. It could withstand the heat and minor flames that sometimes followed nearby detonations. Even the way curtains were hung mattered. Households that overlapped their curtains onto the wall edges rather than hanging them loosely saw better protection because the fabric remained taut. Some families took this even further, lining their curtains with rubberized material or, multiple layers of felt to reinforce their homes. What they created, often without even realizing it, were early examples of blast curtains, a technology still used in modern military and industrial safety zones today. By the midpoint of the Blitz, the Ministry of Home Security began quietly recommending heavier curtain fabrics not just for blackout effectiveness, but for, blast resistance. Some instructions suggested tacking damp blankets behind windows to reduce pressure waves, while others encouraged hanging a second layer a few inches behind the main curtain to create an air buffer. This pocket of space helped absorb shock energy, much like the layered armour used in modern vehicles. Families with limited means adapted resourcefully. Old wool coats, carpet remnants, and sandbags filled with sawdust became window coverings. One recorded example from Coventry described a household that stitched steel wire mesh into their curtains to stop glass shards outright. These makeshift innovations saved lives, not through advanced technology, but through understanding that layers, density and flexibility could turn everyday materials into protective barriers. 80 years later, blackout curtains remain a powerful tool, not just for light control, but for protection. Today's preparedness enthusiasts, especially those living in storm-prone or high-risk regions, can, borrow directly from the wartime playbook. Heavy, multi-layer blackout curtains can act as the first line of defense during explosions, tornadoes, or even urban unrest. Modern versions lined with fiberglass ballistic nylon or rubberized thermal material can help contain broken glass, heat, and dust in emergencies. To create a functional modern equivalent, start by hanging 2 layers of dense curtain fabric rather than 1. The outer layer should be light-absorbing and flame-resistant. Materials like wool or fiberglass blackout cloth are ideal. The inner layer should be flexible and strong, like denim or canvas. Secure both layers tightly along the edges of the window frame rather than letting them hang freely. This simple technique honestly mimics the protective air gap that saved countless lives during the Blitz. In a practical sense, this setup isn't just about wartime nostalgia. It's about resilience. During power outages, blackouts, or even riots, heavy curtains conceal movement and light from outside observers. During extreme weather, they can slow down shattering debris and insulate the home from temperature extremes. Even in peacetime, the same principles make homes more energy efficient and secure. The forgotten legacy of blackout curtains is civil defense wisdom worth remembering. The blackout curtain may seem like a relic of a distant war, but its story is one of ordinary people turning fear into ingenuity. Without engineers or modern materials, they built layered defences that protected their families from one of the deadliest bombing campaigns in history. It's a powerful reminder that real preparedness starts at home, with observation, adaptation, and the willingness to learn from the past. If you've ever wondered what home defence really meant before alarms and steel doors, this is it. Fabric, patience, and human determination formed the first shields in living rooms across wartime Britain. Today, the same spirit applies when we retrofit homes for storms, blackouts, or any other threat. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to remember how it was built. So, if this dive into the history and practical science of blackout curtains has sparked your curiosity, don't let it end here. Subscribe to In the Beginning for more deep dives into the survival ingenuity and overlooked inventions that shaped everyday resilience. Share this story with someone who values history not just as memory, but as instruction. Because the past didn't just survive, it protected, and it still can.